The biblical story of Daniel is a fascinating narrative that involves unwavering faith, divine wisdom, prophetic visions, and powerful acts of God amid persecution. Daniel was a prophet who lived during the Babylonian exile around the 6th century BC, and his story is recorded in the book of Daniel in the Old Testament. I will tell the story in detail, including the events and historical context. Daniel lived during the time when the kingdom of Judah was conquered by the Babylonian Empire under King Nebuchadnezzar. In 605 BC, Nebuchadnezzar invaded Jerusalem, and many Jews were taken captive to Babylon. Daniel, a young Jew of noble lineage, was one of the exiles chosen to serve in the Babylonian court. The Babylonians, after conquering a nation, had the custom of bringing the most promising young men from those lands to be educated in their ways and to serve in the palace. Daniel was trained in the language and culture of the Chaldeans, Babylonians, along with three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, whose names were changed to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, respectively. Early on, Daniel demonstrated his faith. King Nebuchadnezzar ordered that these young exiles be given the best food and wine from the palace, but Daniel, being faithful to God's dietary laws, decided not to defile himself with food that violated the law of Moses. He asked the chief of the eunuchs for permission to eat only vegetables and drink water for 10 days. God honored his decision, and at the end of the 10 days, Daniel and his friends were healthier and more robust than the other young men who ate the king's food. This was the first of many examples of Daniel's faithfulness to God and how God blessed him for it. One of the most notable events in Daniel's life occurred when Nebuchadnezzar had a disturbing dream but could not remember or understand its meaning. He asked the wise men, magicians, and astrologers of the kingdom to reveal and interpret the dream, but none of them could do so. Nebuchadnezzar, enraged, ordered the execution of all the wise men in Babylon, including Daniel and his friends. Daniel, however, asked for time to seek God in prayer. God answered Daniel's prayer by revealing the dream and its interpretation. The dream involved a gigantic statue made of different materials, a head of gold, a chest and arms of silver, a belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, and feet partly of iron and partly of clay. In the dream, a stone cut without human hands struck the statue on its feet, destroying it completely, and the stone grew into a great mountain that filled the whole earth. Daniel explained that the statue represented the kingdoms that would succeed one another in history. Babylon was the head of gold, followed by lesser empires. The stone represented the kingdom of God, which would destroy all earthly kingdoms and last forever. Nebuchadnezzar was so impressed with Daniel that he promoted him to a high position in the kingdom and made his friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego governors over the province of Babylon. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego faced their own test of faith when Nebuchadnezzar built a massive golden statue and ordered everyone in the kingdom to worship it. Anyone who disobeyed would be thrown into a fiery furnace. These three men, faithful to God, refused to bow down before the statue. Enraged, Nebuchadnezzar ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual and threw the 3 young men inside. Miraculously, God delivered them. When the men looked into the furnace, they saw not 3 but 4 men walking in the fire, and the 4th looked like a son of the gods, an angelic appearance, possibly Christ himself. When the young men were brought out of the furnace, not even their hair was singed, and their clothes did not smell of smoke. Nebuchadnezzar acknowledged the power of their God and decreed that no one in the kingdom could blaspheme against the God of Israel. Later, Nebuchadnezzar had another dream, this time about a massive tree that was cut down to the stump. Daniel interpreted the dream as a warning from God that the king's pride would lead to his downfall. Despite the warning, Nebuchadnezzar exalted himself, and God fulfilled the prophecy. The king lost his sanity and lived like an animal in the field for 7 years, until he acknowledged God's power. After that, his sanity and kingdom were restored. After Nebuchadnezzar, his successor Belshazzar held a great banquet where he used the sacred vessels from the temple in Jerusalem to toast pagan gods. During the feast, a mysterious hand appeared and wrote on the wall, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Belshazzar was terrified and called Daniel to interpret the writing. Daniel explained that God had numbered the days of Belshazzar's reign, Mene, that he had been weighed on the scales and found wanting, not tekel, and that his kingdom would be divided and given to the Medes and Persians, Parsin. That very night, Belshazzar was killed, and the Babylonian Empire fell. Under the new Persian rule, Daniel continued to stand out, now under King Darius. This aroused the envy of other officials who plotted against Daniel. They persuaded King Darius to sign a decree forbidding anyone from praying to any god or man except the king for 30 days. Daniel, faithful to God, continued his daily prayers. His enemies reported him, and despite Darius's great respect for Daniel, the king was forced to throw him into the lion's den. Darius spent the night fasting, and in the morning, he hurried to the den, calling out to Daniel. Miraculously, Daniel responded, as God had sent an angel to shut the lions' mouths. Daniel was brought out unharmed, and the men who had accused him were thrown in and immediately devoured. The book of Daniel also contains prophetic visions that Daniel received, in which God revealed the future of the world's kingdoms and the final destiny of God's kingdom. Among them is the vision of the four beasts, which represent world empires, and the vision of the Son of Man, which refers to the coming of a divine ruler, often interpreted as a prophecy of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. This story is a powerful narrative of faith, courage, and divine intervention in times of tribulation. It shows us that even amid the severest pressures and threats, God remains faithful to those who serve him wholeheartedly. Daniel's life also points to the future kingdom of God, which will triumph over all human kingdoms. In the first year of Belshazzar's reign, Daniel had a night vision that is among the most famous in the book. He saw four great beasts emerging from the sea, each different from the other. The first beast was like a lion with eagle's wings. Its wings were torn off and it was lifted from the ground and made to stand like a man. The second beast looked like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth. The bear was told, "Get up and eat your fill of flesh." The third beast was like a leopard with 4 wings of a bird on its back and 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. The fourth beast was terrifying, dreadful, and exceedingly strong. It had large iron teeth and crushed everything underfoot. It had 10 horns, and among the horns arose a little horn that uprooted 3 others. This little horn had eyes like a man and a mouth that spoke arrogantly. Daniel was perplexed by the vision, and an angel interpreted it for him. The 4 beasts represent 4 kingdoms that would rise on earth. The fourth kingdom would be especially fierce and rule with great power, but it would be destroyed when the Ancient of Days, God, came and established his eternal kingdom. The Son of Man, or Humra, a heavenly figure, would be given authority, glory, and power, and his kingdom would never be destroyed. This figure is often interpreted as a reference to the Messiah. In the 3rd year of Belshazzar's reign, Daniel had another vision. This time, he saw a ram with 2 large horns. One horn was larger than the other. The ram charged in several directions, conquering everything in its path. Then a goat appeared from the west, moving so quickly that it seemed to hover above the ground. The goat had a large horn between its eyes and furiously attacked the ram, breaking its horns and overpowering it. After defeating the ram, the large horn of the goat was broken, and 4 smaller horns emerged in its place. From one of these smaller horns, another small horn grew, waging war against the holy people, desecrating the sanctuary and interrupting the daily sacrifice for a period of time. The angel Gabriel appeared to Daniel and explained the vision. The ram represented the Medo-Persian Empire, with its 2 horns symbolizing the kings of Media and Persia. The goat represented Greece, and the large horns symbolized Alexander the Great. When Alexander died, his empire was divided among 4 generals, the 4 horns. The small horn that later emerged is often interpreted as Antiochus IV Epiphanes, a ruler who persecuted the Jews and desecrated the temple in Jerusalem. Daniel, studying the scriptures, realized that the prophet Jeremiah had predicted that Israel's exile in Babylon would last 70 years. Based on this, he began to pray and fast, confessing the sins of the people and asking God to restore Jerusalem. As he prayed, the angel Gabriel was sent to give him understanding. Gabriel revealed the famous prophecy of the 70 weeks, or 77s, which are generally interpreted as 70 periods of 7 years, totaling 490 years. The prophecy has been widely debated, but in general terms, it speaks of the time until the coming of the Anointed One, commonly understood as the Messiah, a period of tribulation for Israel, and the ultimate end of sin and the establishment of eternal righteousness. The prophecy is divided into three parts: 7 weeks, 49 years, for the rebuilding of Jerusalem; 62 weeks, 434 years, until the coming of the Anointed One; a final week, 7 years, during which there will be great tribulation. In the middle of this week, the sacrifices will be interrupted, and there will be a desolating abomination. In the final chapters of Daniel, the prophet receives a series of complex and detailed visions about future conflicts between kings of the north and south, commonly interpreted as the kings of Syria and Egypt. These conflicts are part of a great spiritual battle that also involves the angels of God. In chapter 10, Daniel begins praying and fasting for 21 days. At the end of that period, an angel appears to him, saying that his prayer had been heard from the first day, but that he had been delayed by a spiritual battle with the prince of Persia. This angel was assisted by the archangel Michael, who is described as the protector of Israel. In chapter 11, Daniel receives a very detailed vision of future kings and their wars. Many scholars identify these kings as belonging to the Seleucid and Ptolemaic empires, and there is a particularly vivid description of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who persecuted the Jewish people and desecrated the temple in Jerusalem. Antiochus is described as an arrogant and treacherous king who will make false alliances and fiercely persecute the holy people. He will desecrate the temple, interrupt the sacrifices, and set up a desolating abomination. The final chapter of Daniel contains a vision that speaks about the end times. The angel Gabriel tells Daniel that there will be a time of great distress, such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. At that time, Michael, the great prince who protects Israel, will arise in their defense. Chapter 12 also contains one of the earliest explicit references to the resurrection of the dead in the Hebrew Bible. Gabriel tells Daniel that many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth will awaken, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. This is one of the first glimpses of the concept of resurrection, which would become central to both Jewish and Christian theology. Gabriel concludes by telling Daniel to go your way till the end, for he will rest and rise at the end of the days to receive his reward. The book of Daniel is a blend of historical narrative and prophetic visions. It gives us a perspective on how God governs history, intervenes to protect his people, and how, in the end, the kingdom of God will triumph over all human kingdoms. The prophecies of Daniel, especially concerning the end times, continue to inspire and challenge scholars and believers to this day. Daniel was a man of extraordinary faith who remained faithful to God amid immense challenges and persecution. His visions offer a message of hope, reminding us that even in times of great distress, God is in control and his promises will be fulfilled.